It was written by King David after his particularly big failure. Beautiful psalm. It made it into the Bible, but it was basically a prayer as he was trying to come back into God's presence. David's heart was cluttered with all kinds of junk. He'd been hiding his sin for about a year. I'm guessing on that. David's stumble, his fall, involved adultery with Bathsheba. And then as she called back and sent a message that said, I'm with child, it involved then the murder of her husband, Uriah. And then King David went on pretending that nothing was wrong. He had her husband killed in a battle, sent a message by his own hand back to the commander that said, attack at this certain front and then at some point withdraw all the support and leave Uriah there to die by the sword. And that's how it went. Bathsheba became a widow. The king invited her to come into the palace. They were married. Bathsheba's maybe trying to put her life back together. And King David is trying to keep the secret a secret. But if you think about all the intrigue that might come and go in a palace setting and all the people that knew what had happened, it's really not a secret. I'm guessing that this had gone on for about a year because Bathsheba was with child, the baby is born. Takes about a year, maybe for that to come to light. But on the night of her first visit, somebody was dispatched to her house to make the invitation. Somebody led her to the king's chamber. The cooks probably prepared a special meal. Everybody knew what was happening. And everybody sat on it for a little while. But as all the palace workers went back to their village, went out the next day, they talked as they walked, and they told two people, the old commercial, they told two people who told two people who told two people. It really wasn't a secret, and so everybody's pretending, from the king down to the street level. The king is probably wrestling a little bit, but I would guess King David kind of just turned off his conscience. And after a while, God stops speaking when you say no, no, and you put up those walls around the heart. And so his heart is full of the brokenness that comes from adultery and murder and lying and all the layers that followed as he tried to protect himself from exposure and just pretended that I'm the king and I can do what I want. And David in that season became like every other king. I'm the king, and I can do whatever I want. His full confession, we read in Psalm 51. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. According to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions, wash away my iniquity, cleanse me from my sin, for I know where I have fallen short. My sin is always before me. Against you and you only have I sinned. That's not quite true, because David had not only broken God's law and sinned against God, he had also hurt the whole people gathered around him. Not just the family that he broke, the marriage that he ended, and the person that he trespassed against. It wasn't just God, but there were a lot of people who watched and also felt the pain of Bathsheba and her husband. David's struggle then was what to do next. He suddenly had all kinds of regrets. He suddenly had a deep awareness of what he had done. He couldn't undo any of his actions, but he could call upon God's grace and mercy, and that's what he did. He said, God, will you make my heart clean again? And God's the only one that can really clean our hearts or clear our past or restore us by his grace. God uses a variety of circumstances in that process, and sometimes God uses struggle. Sometimes God uses difficulty and pain to get our attention, to call us closer. Sometimes it's the difficulties of life that refine us. And if you think of the chemical processes that are used for minerals and resources, there's a lot of fire that goes into burning away the dross, the impurities, blowing away the chaff in grain and wheat. And it's not an easy process. And spiritually speaking, it's not a fun process to be in. But if our prayer, if the cry of our heart is, God, restore me, create in me a clean heart, it begins with that willingness to go into the process that God lays out before us. Sometimes we think about how does this work in community as we connect with other people and as maybe other people's stuff spills over into our lives. Sometimes it's tempting to pray, create in me, or oh God, I pray, create a clean heart in the row of people over there. I know I'm a sinner. God says all people are sinners, but that row of people maybe are a little more sinners. We could feel a little better about ourselves if just a couple rows of us maybe had clean hearts. And yet the prayer isn't about, oh God, help to fix them, help to fix my neighbor. Jesus had a couple words about the people that looked across the aisle instead of in the mirror. It had to do with planks and specks. He said, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own? How can you say to another, let me take the speck from your eye when there is a plank in front of you? You hypocrites, deal with your own plank, and then you'll be able to see more clearly to remove the speck from another. John Wesley, the spiritual leaders kind of have a hard time accepting, oh, I need to do something. And Jesus referred to them as clean on the outside but dirty inside. Doubling down on his challenge and his confrontation of them, Jesus even referred to them as whitewashed tombs. You look good on the outside, but you're dead on the inside. You're not just dirty, but you're dead. And that's a challenge to all of us. Are we dead? Are we dirty? Do we look okay from afar? But when we look inside, we're crumbling. Cleanliness is not just an automatic deposit. You come to worship and you walk away clean. It happens as you encounter God during this time of worship, as you meet with God, as you surrender to God. Maybe we come with broken hearts. That's where David was. The psalm invites to come with a contrite heart, a contrite spirit, willing to do anything that God requires. We cease calling the shots, and we say, I surrender, oh God. And that's where David landed because of his position and his privilege. He'd avoided God for a year.